So one of the things that people just like probably aren't quite prepared for in organising is door knocking. And that's because I was door knocking this weekend. I'm going to talk more about that in a minute. You know, you get all kinds of people. You get all kinds of people saying all kinds of things. It's mostly positive. But yesterday, first thing that happens when this person opens the door. So, well, actually, it was before the door was even open that the problems began. First of all, there was just this like tacky tat all over the place. It said there was like a sign that said something to the effect of, "I have a big dog, and when she starts barking, shit's about to get real." And I just knew. I knew two things from that. One, your dog is tiny. B, you've never been real about anything in your life, right? In your life. So she answers the door.
Overcompensating for the size of her dog, yeah.
Yeah, so she answers the door, and she's like this, literally with the phone. She goes, "Who are you, love? I'm on the phone." And I was like, "I hear him from Greater Manchester Tenants Union." She goes, "Not a tenant, not a tenant." And I was like, "Okay, doesn't matter, because this is actually just, it's about this piece of land that's just across from your house here, and we're talking about the development that's going on." And she goes, "I don't care, I own my own home, so if they build anything, as long as it puts my house prices up, it's fine." And it was just in that moment.
What if it does not, you fucking dumbass?
Exactly. It was in that moment that I realised why so many people in the housing movement are so dead against right to buy. Because this person had clearly bought their own council house and is now only concerned about the price of which she could sell that council house. Yeah. And there's just no solidarity in that at all, especially when like I'm going around door knocking for an anti-gentrification campaign in her area. Anyway, so there's my cold open.
That's why it's Thatcher's gambit, right? Like it converts people into awful middle class brain. I've got mine. I've got mine, everyone.
That's what it is.
Yeah. I think it's not door knocking, but I've been doing a bit more like going out, meeting my neighbors, trying to pull together the local community. It's had its ups and downs already in the first couple of weeks of it, but I've been doing it for a while. And like something I think Disco Elysium really prepares you well for in like interacting with the white working class is they're so racist. They're just so fucking racist. Like you're just like finally making the move to go and like chat to a couple of like cute old ladies who live on my street who I always see going around. They're always like, and I'm like, "Hey, how's it going?" And like going and chatting to them, and then they're talking about the immigrants, so they're talking about I had this like the blacks within like 2 minutes and like saying the wildest shit. And you're just like, okay, yeah, no, I think you're wrong about those things. Anyway, I hope your son gets out of jail soon.
You got to be ready. You got to be ready for that shit. It's out there. It's real. It's real life. That's real life organising for you. It's Red Planet. We're here to talk to you about more real life organising, more real life protest, more real life left wing news. We got a news episode for you today. We don't have a guest, and it's just me and Soph. So we're going to do a little roundup of the news, talk about some stuff.
But before we do that, travel around. Tim's going on holidays.
Tim's about. Yeah, he's getting about as he does. And before we get into the news segment, Soph, what was the most base thing that you did this week?
Good question. I actually didn't prepare enough ahead, so I'm throwing words in slower than I usually speak to buy myself time to think. I'm saying words and I'm imagining words in my mind right now. It's an incredible talent I have, and I'd say that the answer to your question is that the most base thing that I did this week was a continuation of the same, like trying to build a local community. I've been talking about the vegan group meal a little bit for a while, and that's definitely something that's ongoing. We're building that up, getting more people involved. I also have been meeting more of my neighbors, and thankfully not all of them had turned out to be racists. But like, yeah, I shared some leftovers with some neighbors just yesterday, and then shared some like cooking tips. And I was actually, Muel, I sent you a voice note about this. We were chatting about like community building and the overlap of skills that are needed for mobilizing and organizing and community building. And like I was saying how like in London, I feel like organizations are so much more like professionalized. They're like NGO brain, so they think it's like a job and they think it's like a business. And so like it's not the same, it's not related to like making your community, but like when we came up to visit you last weekend, like it was so obvious that there's so much community in GMTU and in the activist space in Manchester in general that's not there in the same way in London. Like I think that a lot of the like political community people, or the people who would be that same community, like they might be in community with each other, but they're not exactly in community through their organizing in the same way. There's a lot of kids, there's a lot of like middle class kids who are like fucking around being kind of posers and kind of like talking a lot about politics, talking a lot about posts they saw or podcasts they listened to and not taking part in any actions or any organizing. There's a lot of people who are organizers, but then they're like fucking burned out all the time. So they're just hitting the sesh, falling asleep, waking up for the action tomorrow, and then going to their like shit paying job so that they can like just scrape by so they can keep on organizing. And I think, yeah, the community isn't there in the same way. Anyway, I'm hoping to build some community that will hopefully be a basis for some political organizing. At the very least, as I've said, I want to get all my neighbors into a group chat and then say, let's get down to an LIU meeting and get involved with the renters union. But Muel, what about you? What was the most base thing you did this week?
So I was talking about the door knocking that I did. So basically this week, it's always an interesting week when I'm on 8-4 shifts. It's just like quite a bizarre week. You get up really early. I'm just sat there like cold, like looking at my computer screen, talking to old people about what like fucking. I'm not going to tell people about my job. I don't want people to know where I work. But anyway, I have a shit garbage job, but it's all right. It pays the bills. And then in the evenings, I'm always like, right, it's an 8-4. I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to relax. I'm not going to do anything. But then, of course, by Tuesday, I went to the Old Abbey Tap House in Hume because there was Tap House TV Dinners Night, which is basically a night that they put on where people can come and raise any concerns that they've got in the community. It's basically kind of like a people's assembly. They could come there and they could talk about it. They could get support. People could discuss it, debate it, etc. And the thing that was being discussed was this, which I'm just holding this up for the people who can see on the video feed. It's basically a campaign that we're kicking off for our Moss Side branch in Manchester called Rise Up for the Reno. And it's really exciting, actually. It's a bit of Manchester history. Basically, the Reno was a club that was built by a guy called, I think his name was Nigel Egan. Basically, my mate Momo, it was his granddad. Who owned it, and it was one of the only places in Manchester where black people, global majority people, could get a drink in the 40s and the 50s because they would go to bars and get rejected because of the colour of their skin. And so it was a Moss Side staple for decades. Everybody knew about the Reno, everybody knew about the Nile Club, its significance, and obviously because it fell into disrepair and all this other kind of stuff, just, you know, general like bad building from the 1800s and stuff, so they knocked it down like about a decade ago, I think, and there's just been nothing on the site for a long time, apart from like a row of slum housing that's still just up from that time period, basically. Yeah. So they flattened the club, and there's been nothing there. And then Moscare St. Vincent, which is a social housing landlord, came to Moss Side last year, and they said, right, we know what we're going to put there. We've been given the land by the council. We're going to build private buy-to-let flats. And everyone in Moss Side was like, no, we don't want that. So they said, right, well, we'll come back next year with a new proposal. But this time, they neglected to tell the community when they were coming back. So we said on Tuesday night, right, we've got to tell people that this meeting is on Tuesday, 26th of November, 6 p.m.
Sorry to interrupt, but isn't that illegal? Like they have to tell the. Like there has to be community consultation for big planning projects, and they have to tell people when the consultation is.
I don't know the legal ins and outs of it. I just know it's fucked.
It's definitely
fucked. It would be good to find out actually for a bit of leverage. So I'll take that to the next planning meeting that we've got. So thanks for bringing that up. But I think that basically the long and short of it was that they hadn't told the residents of Moss Side, the local community, that this consultation was going to happen. So I twatted out this fucking flyer in like a morning, and then we got it printed 2 days later. And then yesterday I went door knocking in the rain on Alexandra Park Estate, because you can see it opposite, like literally there's like a row of houses that are like a curved around, and all of them will be able to see whatever they build on this site for the rest of their lives, if they're in that house for the rest of their lives. You know what I mean? They'll be able to see it. It's going to be in their community. And it was good. I had some good conversations. There were some people who were saying, yeah, I know about the Reno. My pops used to go in there, or my auntie used to go in there, my uncle, and this, that, and the other. That's where my mum and dad met, stuff like that. So everybody understood the historical significance of the site. Apart from this one Scouser who'd bought her own council house and she wasn't asked, and fuck her, whatever, who cares? But it was a really, really good response, and everybody was like, yeah, no, thanks for telling us, because it's like so obvious that they just want to sneak this through, and they don't, you know what I mean? They've not told the community about it. We know what we want there. We know that people in Moss Side need social homes. Like Andy Burnham, the mayor of Greater Manchester Combined Authority, came around Moss Side with GMTU into 2023, and he saw the overcrowding in Moss Side, like in private rented accommodations. You might find like 10 people living in a 5-person house, basically.
London moment, honestly.
Yeah, no, and it happens in London. It happens all over the country, because this is what happens is refugees and asylum seekers get pushed through the system, the temporary accommodation system, and then they get housed, and they get a lot of the times just housed in these super overcrowded private tenants, private rented accommodation stuff, and it's just so bad, and it's just really, really dangerous.
I think there was a story about there was a story about e-bike batteries being dangerous, and it said that one of them had exploded, and like it had happened in one of these places where there was like 12 guys who were all like delivery riders living in a tiny little place that's like illegal, like HMO. Like the HMO license is for like 4 people. There's like 12 guys there. They're in bunk beds in one room, and a guy died in the fire.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
So like essentially, the people needed to know about this, because there's so much overcrowding in Moss Side. They've literally just like, do you know what I mean? They need social housing. People in Moss Side need social housing. They need to be housed, just like everywhere. There's 13,000 people on the waiting list in Manchester, and that's without people who are being processed through the homeless system as well. So it's really, really fucking dire. Moss Side needs social homes. It needs community. One of the people who literally, her house was opposite the planned development site. She was like, we need dentists, we need GPs, we need fucking community garden centers, we need playgrounds. There needs to be a memorial for that site. We can't just have the Reno have been there and then nobody know what was there. It doesn't make any sense. So everybody knows what they want, so hopefully we've mobilized a few people to go to the public consultation. But I'm getting straight on tomorrow morning. I'm getting straight on the next flyer, which is going to have a little WhatsApp group chat QR code to just join us, rise up against the Reno. I don't know what the tagline is going to be. We're going to have to discuss that, but it's going to be something like, we
rise up for the Reno.
Just rise up for the Reno, innit? Yeah. Like, I think that's simple enough, really. So really excited to be helping out with this campaign. Yeah.
I think that like there are those like flagship moments in battles against gentrification where a place really means a lot to the local community. Like the Elephant and Castle shopping center is the one that I always go to. Like it's nearish to me, and it was like years of protest trying to stop gentrifiers from tearing down the shopping center, and it had like the statue of the elephant with the castle on its back, literally like the icon of the whole borough, like right there. And like it was horrible. Like the protest didn't work, and they tore it down. And there was this moment where they hauled away the elephant on a truck, and now it's like outside a bunch of like bougie fucking awful flats with this like plaza of like sourdough pizza, video game bar, hipster like sushi hot dog restaurants, and like they've put the elephant there like a trophy that they won. Like the gentrifiers like took the soul of the community and like wear it on in front of everyone. It's disgusting.
Vile. Yeah, so hopefully we're going to build up a nice big campaign that will then mean that GMTU is backing 4 different anti-gentrification campaigns. There's Block the Block, and there's the Against the Demolition of Council Estates in Collyhurst, Rise Up for the Reno and Ardwick Against the Monster. And I'm pretty sure as well, like the Seven Sisters campaign is part of that as well. So maybe it's going to be 5. Yeah, we could probably definitely call it 5 if the Rise Up for the Reno campaign takes off. So very
Hell
exciting
yeah.
stuff. Very exciting stuff. Let's move on to some even more exciting stuff, though, and we could take it in turns.
Yes.
Actually, it is good that we included both of these today because it means that we could take turns reading them
We
out.
can each read one.
We've got 2 based viewers, chat. Can you believe that? Listeners, audience, can you believe that?
Mule. We have dozens of based viewers.
That's true, but we've
only
only
2
got
of them have written in today.
Who've written in to tell us about what they're doing that's based. For example, based viewer, based department news. I took some trans people to the gun range for the first time. My friends have a Stop the Bleed class planned for early December too. My roommates and I got involved in Food Not Bombs again too. And that's from Maggie Scholl, she, her. Thank you so much, Maggie. Absolute legend.
Thank you, Maggie.
Solidarity, like...
Yeah, this is like, I know some trans people in the US, obviously, and I know some trans people who are involved in gun training, gun safety. And like, I think there is a somewhat viable pathway here for people who are just getting into learning to defend themselves and arm themselves for the possibility the fascists show up in their community with guns, to like get them from that like introductory stage through like basic training, as it were, into more advanced like stuff. And I think this idea of like going to the gun range, also having like a Stop the Bleed class, right? Like getting through like a whole series of different trainings so that you can get people to a more radical place of like community defense, where like everyone's got a little bit of training, everyone knows how they will defend their community, and everyone's coordinated in their local community, so they all know each other. They all know what they're going to do in the eventuality that fascists show up. You know, this is how you create meaningful community defense. That's sick as hell.
Speaking of community, tell us about the next one.
Absolutely. So Anonymous has said, I had a family member who experienced homelessness and addiction before they passed away a year ago. I always used to cook food for them, and I've really missed it since they passed away. Recently, I've started regularly cooking and serving food for people living at the main encampment in my town. It was a little confusingly worded, so cut it, but they said that what they're doing here is inspired by the show. I figured it would be nice to help out people in a similar situation as my family member. It was starting to become unaffordable for me to keep purchasing groceries, so I decided to quit vaping, a habit I've had for the last 7-ish years, and put that money toward cooking. I'm definitely in the midst of withdrawal right now, but it feels awesome that in addition to kicking a terrible habit, I get to take that money out of the tobacco industry and put it in my community's pockets instead. Anyway, just wanted to say thank you guys for all you do and encourage you to keep it up. That's so good to hear. I love that. Yeah. I've been talking loads about obviously getting into cooking the last year and like cooking for people in my community. This is so sick to hear about. And like, yeah, that just rules. That just fucking rules, basically. Yeah. I don't know what I want to say about it, but it's very cool.
I think it's really cool. Homeless people, if they are organized, could be so powerful. I mean, obviously all of us, if we're organized, can be powerful, but I think homeless people in general,
absolutely.
You know, we were trying to organize homeless people sort of a little haphazardly at the start of the year here in Manchester, and it went kind of okay, and then they all moved to the Palestine camp at the university, and now a lot of them have moved to this Brunswick camp, which is preventing the gentrification, which I talked to you about on the last show, I think. Yeah. So I think that, like, basically getting some homeless people some political education if they don't have it, and just like some like really basic tools in organizing, because homeless people are mostly organizing themselves most of the day anyway. If you can give them sort of tools and support to make that easier and get it so that they can have land squats, even not even just land squats, but actually like building squats, all this kind of stuff, we could start to really actually think about proper land reclamation as a concept in the UK. It was something that was actually brought to. We had the Queer Caucus meeting with GMTU, which someone came to it and said, "Oh, I want to talk about land back," and I thought, well, that's interesting. It's sort of mainly like a imperial periphery concept. And
Right.
the way that they were presenting it was like, well, look, land back counts for the UK. Like,
Yeah,
who were you before you were
absolutely.
colonized? Like, for Ireland, it's easy. For
Yeah,
Scotland, it's easy. For Wales, it's easy. But
yeah,
England, like, it's a little more difficult. And that's why I think
absolutely.
it's a good conversation to have. Like,
Yeah.
who were the fucking English before we were colonized? Like, what did we do?
This
What did we worship? Like,
Yeah, this is a huge part of the conversation around the Zad and that we had on the Zad, like where they were talking about who were the French before they were colonized. There were people there who were like learning the Breton language, which is like the language of the people of Brittany before it was incorporated into the what's it, the Frankish kingdom. And like they're trying to like revive the language, they're trying to revive the traditions. They have some of the new traditions and rituals they do on the Zad. They try to work in parts of like Breton tradition there as well. Like, yeah, I think it's super real. And I remember as well when Jay and Issa were on the show, like when we said, now you've got the Zad, now you've got this land, and you've like made this into common land and claimed it for the people. Like, what's next? Like, what's the next thing? And they were like, oh, just do it for everywhere else. Like, just the rest of Europe, the rest of the world. They're just like, you know, make all the land to all the people. It's like, fuck yeah, that's what we got to do. Um, yeah, I think homeless people. There is like a lot of revolutionary like power, like an opportunity that people just ignore because homeless people are in such a precarious and shitty position that like people think that they're just helpless, right? And they're just a charity case. And it's actually like, no, if you can, firstly, you should recognize the skills that homeless people have and have to rely on to exist all the time. Like this is some of the most resourceful people by necessity that there are. But then you also have to recognize that, like, I saw something just today that was talking about how people think homeless, in capitalist society, people think that homeless people are like bad people who made bad choices and that's why they're there. But actually, like the biggest growing demographic of homeless people are seniors who have never been homeless before, who have just like run out of money at the end of their life because like capitalism doesn't have any plan for the elderly, doesn't care at all about people who aren't productive units for capitalism. And like yeah, that's just like so on the one hand you have to recognize that like there is a lot of necessary like skill learning and development for people who are faced with homelessness um, and relying on social networks at the same time that it's something that is an issue that can affect anyone. And yeah, like homeless people should be like organizing. It's a huge thing. Yeah. Anyway, so it's very cool that we had two based viewers write in this week. Please write to us. We'll give you the usual call to action in a second to do that. I just wanted to highlight the fact that we have one based viewer this week who is arming trans people, one based viewer this week who is just cooking some food for people in their community. Perfect, absolutely perfect range of the like spectrum of based stuff. We love hearing from our viewers.
yeah.
Please write in and tell us about absolutely whatever you're doing. It can be the one or the other or anywhere in between, as long as you include a message in there to remind me to quit vaping as well, because I need that. So please, okay, here's the usual call to action, but I'll add a little bit to it. We want to know what base things you've been doing. You can message us on Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok, or send an email to based@redplanetshow.com. Include your name and pronouns and an encouragement for Sophie to quit vaping, and we may shout it out in a later episode. So, this is going to be a news discussion episode. We're just doing a revolutionary news roundup. We're talking about various protests, the development of the situation in Gaza, and the opposition to the Israeli genocide machine. We're talking about news in the UK, in Aotearoa. There's some stuff in Europe, and there's also a couple of things in the developing in the imperial periphery. We're going to talk about Haiti and Sri Lanka as well. So, our first story is the ICC. Mule, do you want to tell us about it?
I do. I do want to tell you about it. The ICC has issued arrest warrants for Netanyahu, Gallant, and has rejected challenges of jurisdiction from the Israeli government. So, this is too little, too late. Of course, it is. It's a really interesting bit of news, though, and I'll go into a little bit about that. It's been a year and 2 months of genocide. The ICC has finally issued these warrants. It's worth mentioning because apparently the ICC have issued 49 arrest warrants, or somewhere in the region of 50 or 40 arrest warrants over the course of its lifetime. And this is the first set of warrants it's issued for any Western-backed power. So,
That's huge.
definitely historically significant. Of course, this is why Israel challenged the jurisdiction of sort of, trying to measure whether it's been doing war crimes and stuff like that, and saying like, oh, don't worry, we'll investigate ourselves. And, they're saying you don't need to do it. America's backing us. It's fine. The UK are backing us, etc., etc. And the ICC has just finally just gone, no, sorry, see you in a bit. So there you go. Basically, it's interesting. It's simply interesting. I mean, it's one of these things that we've discussed a lot in the past, where we've said, where are the teeth here? What's going to happen? At the end of the day, what it does serve as is precedent for Palestine actionists all over the world to shut down any and all operations by any company or any collection of individuals that are trying to further the genocide in Gaza and also the West Bank, just in Palestine in general. So, I think that it does serve a bit of a purpose for us in resisting imperialism.
Yeah.
It's obviously part of the imperialist structure. But, if we're going to be thinking about organs and bodies and stuff like that, you can have an organ that goes bad. You can have a leg that falls off. Maybe that's what this is. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see, because Senator Tom Cotton's talking about the Hague Invasion Act. Completely normal stuff.
Yeah. The you're talking about the ICC as an organ of the world order as it currently exists. Yeah, absolutely. No, I think this is fascinating to see, because I think that is like when the social organism of imperialism is coming into conflict with parts of itself. I don't know what's gonna fucking happen. I mean, it's probably gonna fucking die. Like it's just this is all like quite unprecedented in the history of the empire we currently live in. It doesn't look good for them. I don't think that they're going to heed it, obviously. But we have been saying for the last few weeks, as more and more parts of the international criminal justice system have recognized war crimes in Israel, officially declared that it's a genocide, as recognized by the UN. And now the ICC is saying arrest Netanyahu. That's actually absolutely fucking huge, and means means that. So the international criminal justice system is this is in place for America sits above and outside of it, right? And everyone is conscious of this. When Tom Cotton's talking about the Hague Invasion Act, it's that America says that they will invade the Netherlands if ever an part of the American war machine is tried for war crimes at the Hague. And I mean, the US fighting a war with the Dutch, I don't know. Whoever wins.
The two people you hate the most are going to war, and you can't choose which one to support.
Exactly. But no, it's still the international criminal justice system exists so that America can legitimize itself as world police, and it legitimize itself as the fucking fascist power on the world stage that it gets to be, right? But now they're turned against the American imperialist project. It's bizarre to see. I think I don't know. I think I'm immediately wary when it's about a kind of respectability politic, and it's about we can shame them. We can say, look, this thing happened. I think that this was when Joe Moen was on the show from the Good Law Project. We had a discussion about trans rights and the UK government and setting legal precedent, and then shaming the government in the international stage. I was very skeptical of that, and I told him so at the time, on the fundraiser stream. But I think what you're saying about it's setting a precedent for Palestine actionists to be able to say we're doing something that's recognized as on the side of the law, we're trying to stop the shit that is being recognized as war crimes. I don't know, it's bizarre, right? Because at the same time, discourse and the world of words and debating and like the liberal political idea of like the marketplace of ideas, it's all fucking guff, right? It's all obviously like a bunch of wanky gibberish. And at the same time, like the the immediate use of words has such an effect on people. Like if you are challenged in the middle of doing an action and you're like, well, actually, the fucking UN says what I'm doing is right and what our government is doing is wrong, then whoever's challenging you has like will have like pause for thought. Like they won't like they're not necessarily gonna fuck off. If you're talking about like cops, if you're talking about like security guards who are employed there, they're gonna stick to doing their job and try to like stop you doing it. But if it's a bystander, then like yeah, they are gonna be like, oh shit, hang on a second.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I don't
that's
know, really.
I think that that's what counts, really. I think that that is what counts, is that um the everyday person who has not been swayed by these arguments before, these very basic moral ethical arguments about standing up to a state that is committing genocide, who have for whatever reason not been bothered, they've not heard about it, whatever. They've been hearing about the genocide, they're thinking, oh, there's loads of people saying lots of stuff about it, I don't know what's going on. And all of a sudden this sort of like big institution just goes, yeah, now you gotta arrest these guys, it's just game over.
Yeah, it cuts through it.
I think that stuff is like it's definitely positive. I'm not saying it's going to change the world, but I think it's a gain, it's a win. We should celebrate all wins. We could be skeptical of the power of the win, but it's a win, and we should be. I think not like necessarily thankful, but I think that we should like take it as like well, thank fuck you're finally listening. You know what I mean? Thank fuck you're finally listening.
Yeah.
I also think it does represent part of the imperialist machine dying, like you say, because since then, I believe it was since then. I might be wrong. I think this might have only happened on Friday. I can't remember. But at any rate, this week, Putin literally said, "I will bomb the UK," and it's like.
Based
Yeah,
Putin, I'm sorry. I gotta
after,
support the homophobic, transphobe, fascist. All of a sudden, friendly bombs. Come on, white, just blanket the UK.
Yeah,
just do it.
But it is funny because it's like, well, Putin is mad at the UK because the government is selling is using what's the one it's a type of rocket. I can't remember what the name of the rocket is. It's a type of rocket. It's made in the UK. The UK has said, yep, you could use those in Ukraine. And now Russia has been like, I'm gonna bomb the fuck out of Britain, bro. Like you ain't even fucking around. And like, so I think that's super funny because what he's actually specifically saying is he's gonna bomb arms factories. Whether he does or not, who knows? Whether it happens or not, who fucking knows? Who cares? Jesus Christ,
There's
just
no
so
way.
insane.
It's absolutely not going to like military aggression on a country in the imperial core. I mean, the UK of all countries, like it's not going to happen. It would literally no way.
It would be so funny if he did target arms factories in the UK.
And took out the UK's support for war, right? And it wouldn't just be their support for Ukraine. It would be their support for Israel because it's the same fucking machine. It's the same industry, right? It's our arms industry, which is so much of like Britain's GDP and its economy, which is disgusting just to think about. Like what a disgusting country this is. Or like, well, the ruling class. What a disgusting ruling class we have in this country.
Yeah. And the other thing that I wanted to say is that because he's never really said anything of that nature about the UK before. He's definitely said things like the UK is silly and it smells and it's weird and it's full of weirdos and all them queers. They like queers do whatever they want and it's abhorrent.
He said he loves J.K. Rowling.
Yeah, all that stuff. He's said things like that. But like he's never directly said I'm going to bomb the UK and just like felt like he could get away with it. He's just said it and it's like I'm gonna bomb the UK. I think that represents like this week is definitely there's been a shift in empire this week and it's constantly happening over a longer period of time. But I think that this week particularly has been like it's been two big blows. Putin just feeling like he could say that and get away with it, and also the ICC being like, these boys got to go to jail.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, it's the same week that Trump has announced his cabinet as well, and it's just like,
nonsense.
we know shit is going to be disgusting and evil and vile and fascist under Trump, but also like he's announced his cabinet and they're all like just complete clowns. They got RFK in charge of. They're all pedophiles. Like you got RFK in charge of health, like he's gonna completely rework the FDA or whatever. Fucking Dr. Oz is doing part of Trump's
Great.
and
Great.
yeah, so it's just like the entire empire that we exist within, the entire imperialist order is just like turning to dog shit in their hands. And like when we talked about Russia, right? Like we talked about Russia and its positioning when the invasion of Ukraine was like kicking off. And like it's important to understand like Russia has had this like my brain is blanking on any other word, I'm sorry about this, but frenemy relationship with the West European part of the imperial core, right? Where it's like we've talked about this, how when we talked about Fortress Europe, how Russia has a control on migration because there's a lot of like Asian migration that like goes into Russia and then across the border from Russia into Europe. And like that means that Putin and like Russia as a state has a like control on a valve of like how immigration works for Europe, and that means that it has a control on like the workforce, it has a control on like some degree of politics, and like that means that they can be simultaneously antagonistic, but they also have to work together. They have to have some kind of collaboration, and getting to the point where you're just like saying, "I'm gonna fucking bomb you, bro," like that's something else entirely.
Yeah.
I think it's Putin has said, I'm glad they remembered about Putin saying that he likes J.K. Rowling because I think he uses a lot of press to just basically troll people, just say like confusing bullshit that like makes people. Because he used to be in like not the KGB, the one after that.
Yeah.
Whatever
one was after the fall of the wall. Yeah.
And like so he knows about propaganda, and I think it's very obvious whenever he does press stuff that he is just trying to like speak to the world stage in a really confusing and disorienting way. But this is his move from like just like trolling people to like making active threats of violence that like I don't know, like threats can mean something, right? Like they can actually provoke like a more tense situation because it's not just saying whatever fucking nonsense to make a media storm. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, that's a little bit about Zionism and how it's going to go to jail. Sophie, tell us about how talking about Zionism is going to put us on Twitch jail just after we started streaming on here again.
Yeah, that's true, actually, yeah. So Zionists are going to go to jail because the ICC says so, and Twitch disagrees with that. They say, actually, if you say Zionist, that's evil. My headline here is Twitch updates terms of service in compliance with Zionist genocidal doublethink. Fuck them. Fuck Twitch. Fuck Zionists. I will straight-facedly talk about this for a second, which is just like they've updated their terms of service to say that like they have said they're going to treat Zionists as meaning Jews or Israelis, especially when it's next to some kind of threat or discriminatory speech, right? And well, Zion like treating it as a proxy for Israelis, it's not that wrong.
No.
Because the whole Israeli war machine is like when we're talking about that, treating it as a proxy for Jews is crazy anti-Semitic of them. There was some back and forth with Richie Torres, exhausting Democrat Zionist, was being critical of Hassan Piker. Hassan Piker was being based. That's about it. I don't know. I'm not going to get that far into it. But just fuck Zionists, fuck those Zionist scum.
Fuck 'em.
I don't. This is why Conrad said we're on Twitch again this week, but probably just for this week. I don't particularly care if we catch a ban for this one. Fuck the Zionist order, and I hope they all suffer all the horrible injustices and suffering and unthinkable horrors that they have visited upon the people of Palestine. I hope the same things happen to them. I hope the same things happen to them, right? Like, fucking...
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Is there more to say about that?
Not really. It's just, look, at the end of the day, we're
also on YouTube. If you're hearing this and you're like, oh, they're on Twitch now. They're also on YouTube. We might just be on YouTube by the time you're hearing this.
I think it's worth talking about Kira and the fact that she got banned because she was being so based about Palestine. She was just saying all the correct things.
Absolutely.
And it's just another sort of like it's a move to make that kind of thing official, where it's like, okay, we're gonna ban this one woman who's become a bit of a pariah because misogynists hate her, and all the people on the fucking liberal shitlib radlib bullshit left hate
Yeah.
her and stuff, and now it's like officially formalized that to be like, oh no, yeah, now we have like a precedent to be able to get away with banning people for talking about that stuff.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
I just
Yeah.
think that that's it, really. Yeah,
Well, Kira's case is right. Like, we all know what the deal is with Kira, our co-host, is that she's been followed around the internet by people who fucking hate her, like who hate her for just basic misogyny. Like they
yeah,
just hate women and they want to make a woman's life bad,
yeah,
right? And they Kira used to be a right-wing political streamer, and she did bad things and said bad things when she was one, and she has changed as a person and moved on with her life. And people have followed her around, trying to make her life hell in a way that they don't try to with anyone who is currently doing the same shit, because they want to pick on someone they feel like they have a right to bully. They want to make a woman's life bad, and that's all that's going on there, right? And
yeah,
I think that's all really good context to say none of this shit is enforced like universally on Twitch. Twitch is
no,
just a fucking horrible harassment machine,
yeah.
like so many social media platforms are. And
What are
like,
they gonna do? Are they gonna ban fucking Hassan for saying Zionism? Like,
right, they're not going to get rid of one of their big fucking like actual earning, like, makes them a lot of money like popular streamers. They're
yeah,
not going to fucking do that. There's no way, right? But it's
no,
like someone who is the subject of an ongoing harassment campaign for years and years
yeah.
and years will obviously catch a bunch of like mass reports.
Yes, and it should also be noted that out of the people who immediately caught a ban after the terms of service changed, the majority of the people who caught that ban were women. One of which, Frogan, is a
Go figure.
Muslim woman. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So solidarity with you lot. Fuck
Yeah,
Twitch. You
yeah.
might as well go over to YouTube. They're much more based about this stuff somehow. Don't understand. But okay. That's how it is. Yeah. Sucks shit.
Yeah,
So
basically. And yeah,
so
free Kira.
free Kira.
Free
Yes.
Kira, fuck Zionists, fuck
Yeah.
Twitch. Tell me about trains.
Trains. It's train time, and in the UK, it's always train time. As in, there are no trains. The trains are broken. They're dead. They're dying. The train just called up to your mum's house and called her a little dickhead. The UK House of Lords this week, though, however, has agreed upon a bill which would see British trains once again come under public ownership, a reversal of one of Margaret Thatcher's government's privatisation policies, hopefully marking the beginning of a broader reversal of privatisation in the UK. The UK government has consistently, since the privatisation of the railways, had to fund repairs, redundancies, refurbishments, and other services for private rail companies that have gone bust, or simply let the train services get very bad, so bad that they cannot operate anymore. And this bill merely normalises a process that has had to happen as a result of privatisation anyway. Now that provisionally taxpayers' money are going towards making the train services in the UK more efficient and affordable, hopefully this will bring us into a new era of public transport, and possibly we might even get a new train guy or handful of train guys on TikTok. The bill is unfortunately awaiting royal assent, which is a meaningless piece of shit concept that shouldn't exist before being signed into law. Yeah, it's really interesting. I've heard some people criticize this, and I don't quite know what for or why. I think that mainly the criticism, I might be wrong about this, but mainly the criticism has been like, this is not good enough, and Keir Starmer's still complicit in war crimes. I think it's angled from that angle,
Yeah,
which is
sure.
fine and correct.
Yeah,
However, very good that the railways will no longer be privatized.
yeah. I don't. I mean, I don't credit Keir Starmer with this shit at all. He
No,
like he went back and forth on saying he was going to do this. So it's not based in him having strong principles. He didn't say he was
no,
going to do it, get elected on it, and then do it.
no.
Right? He said, "Oh, I might, but I'm not going to. Oh, I would be popular. I don't know. Can we do a poll, please? Like, it just doesn't like. No, no, no. Fuck off. I'm not going to credit him with it, but it's just a good thing. It's just a good thing actually for the railways in Britain to be in public ownership.
Yeah.
Nat's brother works in like broadly in the rail industry and told us ages ago about like one of the I think it was the worst performing area of rail in the country. I think it was Virgin Rail was operating it, and it was like so many errors, so many like failures, so many like trains just couldn't run, and like massive losses across the network in that area. And so they renationalized it in order to like see if that would help, and it immediately like became one of the best performing, most profitable rails in the whole country. And then they passed it back over to Virgin Rail. Like it's just
Nonsense.
yeah, it's just nonsense, right? Like
Nonsense.
railways, nonsense. Like railways, why would railways be privatized? It's a closed system with like you're literally stuck on one track. Like you can't. There's no room for like competition. Like they're natural. That's the term, right? Natural monopolies. Like there should just be one provider providing this thing, the same way there should be with water, the same way there should be with healthcare, the same way there should be with education, and it should be a representative body of the society we live in. If that's the fucking state, because the state exists, unfortunately, fine. If it's the community doing it, even better.
I'm just going to read a couple of bits from the Independent article about this.
Yeah, go for it.
Sir Keir Starmer tweeted, "We said we would create great British railways. We are." So that's great. It's great that you said that. I think that mainly this has been pushed.
Children being killed in Palestine. Then
yeah, I think the main person who's been pushing this is Transport Secretary Louise Hay, and I'm always loath to praise anyone in the Labour cabinet or any Labour minister, because obviously they might just be a TERF or like a Zionist or whatever.
Of course.
But Louise Hay sounds pretty based. She was making some comments about the hire and fire practices at P&O ferries, and then DP World was like, no, we're not gonna invest £1 billion in the government now because of this. So she's like a bit controversial. She's been leading the push for socialist reforms. So this is quite good. There are people who are in Keir Starmer's government, Kid Starmer's government, doing this stuff.
Sir Queer Harmer, Sir Israel Armour. And she, also Louise Hay has dyed hair and pronouns. So,
This is very true.
Maybe
does
I like
have
her.
dyed hair and pronouns confirmed. Dyed hair and pronouns confirmed. Yep. So there you go. The railways have gone woke. Can't wait for the great British news articles about that. Any more thoughts about this? I mean, it is just like one of those things where it's like, it's actually sickening that we had to wait 40 years for this to happen. I've never experienced nationalized rail except when I've gone to other countries. Like when I went to Berlin, it was mint. Mm-hmm. You could get a ticket. It was like €5, and you could go on a bus, a train, or a subway all over Berlin. And it was like, great. This is great. Why doesn't everyone have this? That's because fucking Thatcher. That's why.
No, what's insane about what is insane about Deutschbahn, right? When you go to Germany and you're going on nationalized publicly owned rail systems, is that Deutschbahn operates loads of our rail infrastructure and our buses in the UK. Arriva, who provide a bunch of the buses, is a Deutschbahn subsidiary. Other countries, public transport, publicly owned companies are profiting off of our country's public transport infrastructure being privatized. Like that's mind-boggling. That's so absurd.
I also think it's important to remember that, like, Sir Kid Harmer, he is always doing this stuff, like where he's going, oh yeah, look at this really good thing. This is a great thing, Great British Railway. But then in the same breath, like in the budget, he announced that, oh yeah, actually, we're going to be putting up bus fares to £10 maybe. And it's like, well, hang on a minute. You're saying that it's good to have good, affordable public transport, but then you're not doing that. You're doing the opposite of that in the budget. You're saying tighten our belts. Bus socialism, thanks to Andy Burnham in the GMCA, has actually revived my love of buses. I always loved buses because I'm old enough to remember when it was 40p to get on a bus. And, you know, I remember the days when it started to get up to like £3, I was just like, this is a joke now. I'm not getting on buses again. I'm just going to fucking walk everywhere. It's so stupid. But since Andy Burnham brought bus socialism to Manchester, I've been getting on buses all the time. I've been getting on buses all the time.
For the blood of the workers.
They're not red, they're yellow, which is fine. But, you know, whatever. Who cares? They're
good. Let down.
It's £2, and that's the main thing.
That's the important good thing.
I know at any one point, if I am like literally when I was going door knocking the other day, I was thinking like, oh, it'd be really good to get a hire bike, but I couldn't get one. And then I was like, oh, should I walk to Moss Side? I could walk to Moss Side. It'll take me about 20 minutes. Oh. And then I was like, there's a bus there. I'm just going to get on that bus. And I got on that bus and it was fine. And I was there in 10 minutes. So, you know, it's one of those things. It's like, you know, if you have good public fucking services, good public transport, it just improves the quality of life for people across the board. Like it cannot be overstated, I don't think.
I mean, buses are an interesting thing to bring into this discussion because you said that the criticism of it has been that the bill doesn't go far enough, and like if it doesn't, like I have seen people say it should include buses, and I live in South London. In North London, there is a whole ton of rail infrastructure, and it's really easy to get around by tube everywhere, or by overground, or even Docklands Light Railway. Like there's actually 3 different systems of rail network, and there's like all of the national rail things go basically like out from London to the north, right? There's like one line to the south, and like there are loads of buses in South London, right? And the bus drivers are also in the RMT, right? They're in the same union as the train drivers, as the train staff, as the train cleaners, everyone, the train operators. And like, so I don't know. I think like, yes, buses should be a part of this as well. It doesn't make sense for buses to not be. They should just, it should just be a broader bill that should just be all public transport if they want to make it like a real like nationalization of public transport for Britain. But it's still good. It's still good. It's still good and cool.
Still good. Fuck the king. We shouldn't have to wait for him to sign things into law.
No. With his big swollen fingers. Awful.
Gout.
I just wanted to get everyone to think about his gout hands.
Yeah.
His sausage
Sorry
fingers.
to anyone who has gout. I know it's a completely horrible and debilitating disease, but it's funny that the king has it.
Think about the things you're saying to make fun of people, and it's like us shooting the insult about gout at the king, but it just bounces off of him and hits our like your Twitch audience who all have gout and love saying Zionist but can't say it because of the terms of service. The terms of service on Twitch won't let them have gout. Anyway,
let's talk about something that's not gout, but is really, really cool and powerful.
Yeah.
Sophie, tell us about what's going down in Aotearoa.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm really glad, by the way, we caught up with Tim a bit this week. We should have mentioned the Patreon earlier. That Red Planet is a show made possible by the support of our patrons at patreon.com/red_planet. And this week we hung out with Tim before he went off on his travels with his pals. We watched some Star Trek together, some Deep Space Nine. We're showing Tim a couple episodes of Deep Space Nine at a time. In the first one, which the first 2 of those are up on Patreon, by the way. We've got one where we watch the Ferengi feminism episode and the one with Jadzia being a big gay. And we watched one this week where the Cardassians literally say Cardassia has a right to defend itself. It's fucking insane. Anyway, before that, we were asking Tim about the Hikoi. So if people, don't know about this, if they haven't tuned in to the last few episodes of the show, like there's been a massive protest movement going on in Aotearoa recently. And Tim's been filling us in on it like week on week, and I'm sure he's going to tell us even more about it next week. Is he away next week still? I'm not sure. Anyway, he's going to tell us about it next time he's back. And so the Treaty of Waitangi basically is the treaty between the colonizers, the white European colonizers who came to Aotearoa and called it New Zealand and set up their state there, and the Maori. And there were like 2 different versions of the treaty, and so like people have been operating on like different understandings of what it actually says the whole time. But until now, it has been like well defended and defended through organized action as well, and like community organizing, that like Maori have a lot of sovereignty and are able to like able to like manage their own communities more freely, as well as like control of their own land and lives, even though this is still like they're still massively oppressed. Like Emmy Rakete from People Against Prisons Aotearoa pointed out to me when I interviewed her way back that like Maori women are the most disproportionately represented population in the world in prison. Like compared to the size of the population, it's the biggest disproportionality between how big a population is and how many of them are in prison, right? Like situation is fucking dire for Maori people in Aotearoa, but the Treaty of Waitangi has like been this thing that has been this, it's a treaty, like the agreement between them and the colonial power. And recently, a far right and libertarian coalition, country back, like bunch of awful honkies have come into power in New Zealand and have been trying to do everything they can to just like push back Maori rights and like make life as shit as possible. There's been like petty shit that Tim's been telling us about, like just trying to get like Maori language names off of like road signs, which is just like fuck off. Like that's just gross. But there's been like more extreme pushes to try to do things like bring back the borstal system, which is like a cause of a lot of like problems with like organized like gang crime in Maori communities, like has been like stoked and made worse by the borstal system and by the way that like Maori teenagers have been treated. And yeah, so now they're trying to reinterpret the Treaty of Waitangi. And so I've got the Wikipedia for the for the bill to just look at like the way that they're trying to push the change. But it's obviously not going to be as comprehensive a dive into things as we get when Tim is telling us about the stuff from the ground and actually, being in community as a Maori person. But the Wikipedia to just get an idea of why this has like caused uproar. On 19th of January 2024, a Ministry of Justice memo on the proposed treaty principles legislation was leaked. The proposed bill had 3 principles: that the New Zealand government has the right to govern all New Zealanders. The New Zealand government will honour all New Zealanders in the chieftainship of their land and all their property, and that all New Zealanders are equal under the law with the same rights and duties. So crucially, this is not explicitly trying to make changes. This is a reinterpretation, right? And for one, racists love to pretend that they just want to treat everyone equally when they're trying to actually push something really oppressive. And this is why you see people doing the like white lives matter turning into like all lives matter in response to Black Lives Matter. And it's just like, no, you're just saying that because people are trying to address the fact that like lots of Black people are fucking dying. And in the same way, like trying to state that the treaty is saying like we'll treat everyone the same and we have a right to govern all New Zealanders, right? It's like actually no, like making a distinction between Pakeha and Maori for the purposes of like Maori sovereignty and autonomy is actually necessary and not any kind of racism when it's like agreeing a treaty for the sovereignty of a group. Anyway, the ministry's paper expressed concerns that the proposed law would conflict with the rights and interests of Maori under the Treaty of Waitangi, that the Crown was trying to define treaty principles without consulting Maori, that the bill breached international agreements such as the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, and that it infringed on the Maori right to self-determination. Seymour, that's the leader of the Dickhead Coalition, claimed the memo was a natural reaction from a bureaucracy that had presided over increasing division over these issues, but stated the Ministry of Justice was not biased in its advice. So, the usual shit from tiring colonizer racists that you'd expect. But the cool shit that we're talking about this week is that an MP from Te Pāti Maori, Hannah Rafiti Maipi Clark, ripped up a copy of the bill that's reinterpreting the Treaty of Waitangi and started to lead a haka. And then members of her party, Te Pāti Maori, joined in with the haka. This is like on the floor of the New Zealand Parliament, just outright rejecting it, and people in the gallery as well, supporters of her and of the party and of the movement in general, so joining in, doing the haka. This is just incredible footage, like so fucking powerful, instantly iconic. I saw a remix of it today that had like added Rage Against the Machine. Like it's just so sick to see. It's so good, and it's so wonderful seeing like the like white people standing there looking like the most uncomfortable they've ever been.
Yep.
Don't
So
know what the fuck's going on.
the guy who has the hat there is an MP called Rawiri Waititi,
Yeah.
and he did an amazing speech about this bill on the Parliament floor when it was being discussed earlier this week. It's really, really moving. I would encourage everybody to like go and. I don't know much about his other politics, but his speech about it was fantastic. He was saying the very reason that this house exists is because of this treaty. This house would not exist if it wasn't for this treaty. And what he's alluding to there is that there was an active conflict happening between the colonizers and the indigenous people of Aotearoa, happening at the time. And it was only because of that treaty that the consent was there to actually have a relationship with the colonizers. And this bill is, basically spitting in the face of that, essentially just... try to do more colonizing, colonize the colonized again and again. Essentially, So really, really good speech from him. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah. There have been great speeches in general. There have been great like movements all around. The thing I was saying we were catching up with Tim about was the hikoi. The hikoi is as Tim actually told us about this on the last episode. Like it's a big march basically. It's like a it's a pilgrimage style of like protest where like people join in over time with a march that's going on. It started at the top of the North Island, worked down to the bottom of the North Island, and like Tim was telling us about the carkoi where like people join in with a hikoi, but they drive instead of walking. And I think he was saying about he joined in a bit when it was passing through Auckland. And there was. Yeah, that was it. I remember on the Patreon bonus, I was saying to Tim, like, I saw the reporting at like 42,000, which I thought was like pretty good. Like that's pretty sick. New Zealand's not a big country, and like that's cool. But of course, it was like completely misrepresented because always they're playing down the media and the police and whoever are always playing down these numbers. So it was actually like much larger, possibly like 80,000 or more. So yeah, loads of sick stuff going on. Yeah. I'll say like there are loads of speeches to check out in general. Annette Sykes is a really great speaker who just has like tons and tons of just like powerful speeches that don't just like they're absolutely about the Maori situation and the confrontation with the colonizer, but she's really good, I think, at like saying stuff that like really like generalizes out to like loads of other stuff as well. And there's political wisdom to get in like watching her speeches. And I'm blanking on a guy's name, but there are a lot of. I think people should genuinely go and like look up as much as possible from this like protest movement because there's been so much cool stuff. Now let's talk about some more uncool stuff. It's back to the Zionists and how they're scum and how they should get in the gulag 1,000 years. So Muel, there has been
rioting Zionists in Paris. So in Paris, there is a scheduled football match for France versus Israel, and obviously the French police, because they're completely horrific cooks, were like, we have to mobilize 4,000 police officers to make sure that there's no anti-Semitism. But really, we know that the real threat is the Zionists coming to just like fucking murder,
absolutely.
racialized global majority French people, or just any French people really who support
We saw
Palestine.
this a couple of weeks ago in Amsterdam.
Literally the same thing in Amsterdam. Yeah, that's why the French have basically wanted to do this, but happening a week before that match, I think the match is scheduled for this week.
Okay.
And the week just gone, basically there was like a pro-Israel lobby event. I can't remember what it's called. What was it called again? It's called something like Israel Shines or like Love for Israel. Oh, Israel is Forever. That's what it's called. Israel is forever. Thank you, producer. Yeah. So basically, there was this event going on, and yeah, it was essentially like,
My Little Pony for Israel is forever.
yeah. So it's just completely like it was just a completely horrific event. Pro-Palestinian protesters turned up, and they were like, "Let's fucking show these fascists what's going on."
Hell yeah.
It was supported. This event was supported by far right figures. It wasn't just like Zionism. I mean, Zionism is a far right ideology, but we're talking like real, super fascist, super racist, super white supremacists. Like the only reason that they care about Israel is because Israel's killing brown people. If it came to it, they would kill every Israeli just for being Jewish. They're all supporting this like big event, and so these pro-Palestine protesters turned up, and they were like, "No, fuck this, it's bullshit." And there was just like thousands, like absolutely thousands of Parisians, just like carrying Palestinian flags, no
Very sick.
genocides no genociders in Paris and stuff like that. Really, really good stuff. But yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see what happens with the with the football match. Oh, actually, the football match happened
Yeah.
last week anyway. Okay, so we
Yeah.
don't know what happened at the football match, but
Well,
I
it's just
imagine there was some fuckery.
it's the Tel Aviv Maccabees like on tour,
Yeah,
and it's now, I don't know where they're going next, but like it is now two countries in Europe that they've been to, the Netherlands and France, and like there has been conflict around them and like around like Zionist shit going on around their arrival in both places now. And like when we were talking about Amsterdam, literally like this was coming up and everyone could see it coming up, and the French police immediately announced that they were going to put out like 10,000 extra officers or whatever, like
yeah,
in response to it, to like make it safer. It's just like the countries in the imperial core having to like make it safe for Israelis to just like move around and try to pretend to be normal people. When, as we said, when it was going on in Amsterdam, like you have a bunch of like IDF currently on, like, not on duty, but like on their like rotation, but they're currently just like on holiday from killing brown kids.
yeah,
Like coming into Amsterdam and yelling about how much they love killing kids, and then like this is protected by police forces. Like it's, I don't know. I see a lot of shit from people I find absolutely insufferable, where they're saying like the left needs to acknowledge that it's actually not popular to like oppose Israel, and it's not popular to think like death to Israel or whatever. And like, sorry, but actually like a majority of people, it like this is, I was looking at the polling in the wake of like the US election, right? And like 77% of Harris supporters wanted a ceasefire immediately. A majority of all American voters wanted a ceasefire immediately, and
mm,
explicitly, when polled, were like, the government's position on Israel is wrong.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
it's not just that there are these massive protests, it's that there is like just massive popular sentiment that like Israel is a fucking genocidal terrorist state, that it has to be stopped. And like, yeah, like it's something that's in line with the thesis of our show, right? But like the imperialist states are making their conflict with the people more naked all the time by doing shit like sending out thousands of police to defend like a genocide conference, just a conference of people like supporting genocide, or like a football team that's just like touring around trying to pretend like everything's normal. But you can't pretend like everything's normal when you're fucking like genocidal fascists. You actually can't get away with that, and you shouldn't be treated like normal people. You should be run out of town. Fuck you. Fuck
yeah,
Zionists. Run them out of town.
yeah,
I'm calling for people to run Zionists out of town. Fuck them. They're fascists.
yeah. Get rid of him. Um, speed run for getting banned on Twitch. It's still not happened, so we're doing quite well. Yeah, no, this is yeah. I think you said everything that's relevant there. Let's move on. Let's talk about summer based. Soph, tell us about pharmacists in the UK.
Yeah, sure thing. So this is kind of interesting. We're not exactly talking about a union, but I think this is interesting when we're parsing like how um how workers can be involved in struggle and industrial action when it's not exactly a union, right? So the reason I've said that a couple of times now, it's not exactly a union, is we're talking about pharmacists, and pharmacists are small business owners, like primarily. Sometimes you're talking about like they have a few employees, but you're talking about a bunch of small business owners, and small business owners aren't going to join a union, right? So what do you do if you're in a position where like your entire class of people are small business owners, but you're also actually like at the bottom of a hierarchy of like workers because like your like authority is like customer facing, but then like there are bodies above you regulating you and controlling what you do and controlling like what kind of demand there is on you. And that's the position that pharmacists are in, right? Like they are small business owners. They're not workers the same way as like doctors and nurses who are in like their unions, like protesting the way the NHS is being treated are. But they are like frontline health workers of a kind. And um and basically there just hasn't been funding. Like there's been less and less funding for pharmacies in the UK. The broader context of this that's worth saying is like private interests have been trying to kill off um, the NHS since basically like since Anna and Bevan, like literally since it was first invented, like private interests have been trying to kill off the NHS. And their strategy for doing this is by like every time the Tories are in, they slash the funding for the NHS and then the services get worse. And at the same time, like everyone's massively overworked. There are millions of complaints. There are like waiting lists getting longer and all of this stuff. And just like generally like depriving the healthcare sector as much as possible, which like if it were just about like good economic sense, like this is a thing that gets said in the US all the time when they're talking about like Medicare for all and like trying to end like the ownership of like private interests and big insurance companies and all this shit, right? If it was just about good economic sense, a healthy population is a productive and profitable population. Like if it was just about like that and nothing else, it pays itself back like 10 times over to keep people as healthy as possible. Like it just massively raises like your country's GDP and everything. But it's not about that, right? It's about the short-term private interests of a few greedy dickheads who want to be able to like carve up healthcare control in the UK and have it all in the hands of like private healthcare companies. And so pharmacies are like not usually discussed as much in this, but they are like an area that's being hit as well because they like because when pharmacists have more power to prescribe stuff and to like just get people stuff over the counter, people who know what kind of medication they need can go to a pharmacist and just get their shit sorted out without needing to go to a GP. And this reduces like wait times for the NHS, right? Take me, for example, I'm a trans woman. That means that I need a prescription for estrogen, and that's never going to change. I'm going to need a prescription for estrogen the rest of my life, right? I'm going to need estrogen for the rest of my life anyway. Prescription is how the state would like me to do it. So if I can go to the pharmacist and say, I'm a trans woman, I need estrogen, I've been prescribed estrogen in the past, it's always going to be a thing I need. Give me my estrogen. And they are able to like look up my NHS record, see when I was last prescribed it, cool, this is the time when you need it again, and give it to me. That would mean that I wouldn't have to go to my GP. But I do have to go to my GP. I have to go to my GP over and over again to get like the prescription like re-acknowledged and constantly fucking reaffirmed. And this is a completely unnecessary appointment that doesn't need to happen, right? And this would cut down on the hours that the NHS is spending, right? With silly bullshit if pharmacists had more autonomy and also more funding. Like the funding issue is one that's just like until like private interests in the UK are not actively trying to kill the NHS, it's just going to be less and less funding. So I'm just saying that like the change in like what pharmacists can do, this is like a change that can actually alleviate things and make the situation better without just giving more money in general. But anyway, that still relies on pharmacists and pharmacies being available to help people at all. And they too are overworked and underfunded and being relied on in this way to like try and alleviate the burden from the NHS. And this week, the Pharmacist Association, I'm just double checking the name. It is the National Pharmacy Association, ran a survey of the pharmacists in it, and basically they democratically decided that they're going to take an industrial action. It's not a strike, but it's kind of action just short of a strike, really. So they're cutting opening hours and stopping home deliveries for a period to protest how they're being treated and protest how the government is treating pharmacies. The problem of this is obviously like the fear that if they're doing this, then scabs will get their business or whatever. But this is the point of collective action. I don't need to pitch people who listen to our show on the idea of how collective action works. So all that to say, it's a sort of a union, but it's an association, and like this is where we have to sometimes pay attention to associations that aren't like the proletariat and aren't the traditional like working class as you conceptualize them necessarily, but it's still like an industrial action of frontline health workers, trying to take protest against how shit the government's treatment of health is. And just briefly, I'll mention here Health Secretary Wes Streeting, who should not be around anymore. That's all. In his job. He shouldn't be in his job. That's what I was trying to say. I couldn't find the words. I'm sleepy. Yeah. Mule.
He shouldn't be around anymore. It's one of those. It's like if you are standing up against the government, it is normally good. As long as the thing that you're standing up for is not something cringe, like for example, ULEZ cameras. Obviously, like I was talking with my mum about that earlier today. Just like why are people bothered? I actually said to her, I said, I said, Mum, have you heard about those people going around doing ULEZ camera? They're like cutting ULEZ cameras off their poles and they're sabotaging them. And she said, I have heard of that. And I said, Mum, do you know what they're calling themselves? And she said, no. And I said, they're calling themselves Blade Runners.
Oh my God.
And my mum's not like politically on it at all. She doesn't understand the memes about politics or anything like that. But she was driving and she just like looked at me like, and it was, for those listening, that was like a look of utter like confusion and disgust that she gave me. So it's one of those. But yeah, basically, as long as you're not doing anything like cringe like that, great. No, it's good.
Those people could be cutting down like general CCTV. They could just be like,
this is what upsets me about
dismantling the surveillance state. Like these people, there are so many people in like the fringe fucking like the edges of like the conspiracy space. I think the ULAS people are like the edges of the conspiracy space.
Yeah.
Who are like people who are like engaged and like activated. Like they're not just like political, but like they're willing to like go out and fucking do some shit. And I'm just like, do it to Elbit.
Just do it better.
Do it to the police. Do it to fucking what? You're doing it to the ULEZ cameras. What are you doing?
Yeah, who fucking cares? It's so stupid, so unbelievably stupid. Anyway, I don't really have much else to add on that, but we can move on if you like.
Yeah, sure. So, well, you tell me about Haiti.
I'll tell you about Haiti. So there's been a lot of stuff going on with regards to Haiti. The leaders in the West are calling it a security crisis, and essentially it is just because there's not really many government structures in place at the moment. There's just not really there's not really infrastructure and shit like that, and it is bad. But generally speaking, it's it's kind of one of these situations where it's like, this is a country in the imperial periphery. It's been neglected. It's had trade embargoes against it, all this kind of stuff. And also particularly people don't treat the refugees from this country very well either.
Yeah.
It's a
constant. We've talked about it a bit before on the show, and it's just a constant issue of like Haitian sovereignty is just denied, right? Like it's just it's just that Haiti is the only country that had a slave revolt, and the Western colonial powers have wanted to punish them into eternity ever since. And so like constantly are like intervening and like, oh, there's a crisis, we got to get in there, with the UN and whatever, and like the peacekeepers, and like you read about it and you're just like, so Hillary Clinton got the UN to go in there, and while she was in the role, what was it, like
defense
whatever thing, whatever the US title is, and she and when the UN went in there on her request, they brought back cholera.
Yeah,
like it's just like all these interventions that like when they're being described by imperialists, you're like, oh yeah, that sounds shit, there's a serious crisis, you better get in there and stabilize things. And then they go in there and stop people who are organizing communities to try to help. and then they do shit like bring back cholera every time.
It's just completely insane. So I'm just going to read a little bit from this Reuters article. So Port-au-Prince, November 10th, Haiti will name entrepreneur and former Senate candidate Alex Didier Fiem to Prime Minister Gary Conille, who was tapped for the role, in May, according to a transitional presidential council draft resolution seen by Reuters. The shake-up is the latest blow to political stability in the country, which has been racked with worsening violence. Armed gangs have gained control of most of the capital of Port-au-Prince and expanded to nearby regions, fueling hunger and forcing hundreds of thousands from their homes. Not really sure about the accuracy of that. But promised international support still lags, and nearby nations have deported Haitian migrants back to the country. So funny how Reuters doesn't mention that that's the USA, isn't it? I love that they just conveniently forget that the nearby nation that is deporting Haitian migrants back to Haiti is the USA. That's one of the biggest ones.
We're all looking for the guy who did this.
We're all looking for the guy who did this. Yeah, just crazy. So they're reporting here that Didier Fiem is the son of well-known Haitian activist Alex Fiem, who was jailed under the regime of Jean-Claude Duvalier. And I don't really know much about him. I should probably get to know more about my Haitian history.
The briefest possible summary I could give here is that there was a dictator called Papa Doc, and he was horrific and did a lot of horrible shit to a lot of people. And then Jean-Claude was his son and was nicknamed Baby Doc, and just continued that like dynasty and did a lot of shit like you just said, like jailed political opponents.
So there you go. So but this Didier Fiem seems like a bit of a more based guy because his dad was put in prison by Baby Doc, and so hopefully he's taking on some of his dad's politics. Don't know. Yeah. Let's see.
Fingers crossed. I think I think it's somewhere where, like, if we're talking about the collapse of the imperial order that we're under right now, there's going to be a lot of places where, like, if shit falls apart for us, we're actually going to see a lot of places where we've been, like, keeping people down. And I say we here, I mean the ruling class, the same people keeping us down, but, like, keeping countries down and oppressing them for fucking forever. And, like, our shit falls apart and suddenly they're doing better. Like, I honestly think that's something we're going to see with Haiti. Yeah. Like, sparing, like, obviously climate change is a big concern for, like, a small island nation like this, but besides that, like, the less power the imperialist order has to do shit like it's been doing in Haiti for the last, like, forever, for all the decades it's been doing it, like, the less power it has to do that, the more likely it is you'll have people who are Haitian and care about Haiti and have been trying to make Haiti a better place and, like, care about the people of Haiti for a long time, like, actually gain power and then, like, make things better. I'm hopeful, but I don't know loads about this guy in particular. I think it's just one to watch, and we've been checking in on Haiti periodically for a while on Red Planet. We'll see.
I think that it's pretty telling from some Reuters reporting here. That they're talking about this is a new political blow to the stability of the country, and they're talking about, like, a based guy getting in government, and they're like, oh no, the poor Haitians, they can't deal with this. They've got so much on their plate already that's it's nothing to do with us and the country that we operate in. Fuck them.
It's
anyway.
Fucking wild. It's like when you see the media, it reminds me of the media reporting around Jeremy Corbyn, where, like, they would just throw anything possible at the wall to be like, it would be terrible if Jeremy Corbyn was in charge. His policies are all confusing. It's so like, what, like, free food for kids who are hungry. That's who would want that? I don't get it. Like, why are you doing that? Like, you're trying to explain all this complicated socialism, all this Marxism that they want to bring in now by just, like, giving children food. What is that?
And he's got a funny hat. Look at his dirty funny hat. And he rides a bike. He's like Chairman Mao.
Yeah, we can't risk the instability of this bike riding lunatic. It's just like
he grows vegetables and makes jam. What a weirdo! He's probably a nonce.
Yeah, so I don't know. I think it's impossible with reporting around Haiti because there are some actually complicated situations, right? You talk about gangs in Haiti. Yeah, there are gangs in Haiti that do horrible shit that, like, they're responsible for really horrible shit done to people, kill people, hurt people. There and some of those same gangs are doing shit to like shut down imperialist like trade and like fossil fuel infrastructure. They're doing shit like when there's disasters, they're like providing for the local community in ways that like the UN peacekeepers and UN fucking officials like aren't doing because they're not there because they care about Haitians. They're there to like maintain the imperialist order, right? Like,
Yeah.
and so it's like you have reporting about it that's like terror as the gang seize control of this area. You read more about it and you're like, yeah, it sounds like the gangs are like doing some bad stuff, but also like not everywhere is in terror because some people are getting food that they didn't have before.
Yep.
Okay, that's complicated actually. And then you see stuff like this where they're, that all the reporting on Haiti is a fucking nightmare, just absolutely universally.
Yeah. Really, really shit. So let's try and get some better stuff, some better reporting, a revolution that we've been following a bit more betterly, the Sri Lankan revolution. Tell us about the new president.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is interesting. So we've been following this for a couple of years now. Sri Lanka's this is a segment I'm going to title Sri Lanka's new president, wet soggy dengist or pragmatic revolutionary? And that's what I'd like us to decide. Is he a big wet boy or is he cool and a base Chad? And I have my opinion, but I'm hopefully going to try and be nice and impartial and not call him a wet soggy dengist too many times. Not call him a traitor to the revolution, not call him no. Anyway, so Sri Lanka's new president, Anura Kumara Dissanayake, has made a major U-turn and announced that his government will take a handout from the IMF. Side note here, the International Monetary Fund must be destroyed at all costs. Disanayake's election has come after years of dissatisfaction and unrest in Sri Lanka that hit its peak in 2022 when protesters stormed the presidential palace of ousted leader Gotabaya Rajapaksa. So this was the incredible footage that we saw back in 2022 in July. There was this huge surging crowd like running into the presidential palace in Sri Lanka, if people remember this. Rajapaksa was like, his entire cabinet was like family and like family friends, just like doing favors by giving them positions, and it was like horribly corrupt, and nothing was working, and everything was fucked. And on top of all this, the IMF was trying to just completely control the country. So people didn't know about the IMF. It is evil. I don't know. Where do I begin?
There's not really any other way you could.
It's an international loan shark, and it gives poor countries like loans of effectively like imperialist money, American money, on the condition that they work within like the rules of American imperialism. So the protesters who drove out Rajapaksa were vocally opposed to any cooperation with the IMF, the neoliberal financial body critical in the strong army of countries in the imperial periphery into the global capitalist framework that makes them more exploitable to American imperialism. Now, Dissanayake has campaigned on a platform that rests on following through with his promise and rejecting help from the IMF. Like, that's a big deal because it's a thing called structural adjustment policies. Now, structural adjustment is basically restructuring the economy to make it more neoliberal, make like public services rely more on public-private partnerships, and therefore make it so that like investors and like the stock market can like trade on publicly like what should be publicly owned and it is public infrastructure, and instead like American imperialists can make money off of it. Like it's opening up an economy for maximum exploitation by American imperialism. That's the whole point of structural adjustment. And like many populist movements that would be like getting like incredible democratic like seizure of power for the people have been like kneecapped by the IMF. That's why it's so evil. Nelson Mandela, pardon me, Nelson Mandela, when he like got out of jail and was like finally leading South Africa, had this enormous comprehensive set of reforms, including nationalizing the like mineral wealth of the country and like making it so the mines there like would be owned by the people and stuff sold to other countries. It would directly benefit South Africa and South Africans. And when he came into power, the fucking Dutch, the Afrikaners, the white South Africans who'd been in power beforehand, passed a bill to make it so that like the central bank of South Africa wasn't actually under control of the government, but was like privately owned instead. And this meant that like the government effectively had no money and could only operate if it took loans from the IMF. And the IMF then got to dictate whether or not, like, what policies it had. And they said, well, no, you're not going to nationalize your gold mines. They otherwise, how will we all make money off them? Right? You're not going to provide better healthcare and education and housing and food for all your people because then we can't make money off them. That's not fair. And it's always described as well as like part of the development plan. Like it's always framed as being like they are the grown-ups who know how a country is supposed to develop. And so they're just telling these like irresponsible children, which is how they view like, you know, brown people trying to run their own country, like how to run a country properly. Only it's not properly. It's not to do it well. It's to do it in a way where American imperialism can exploit it. And so this is why the IMF has rightly gained a horrible reputation and people are opposed to it. And yeah, so we're just like that's why Sri Lankans fucking hate the IMF. And that's why Desanayake, sorry, campaigned on not taking an agreement with them. And now he's saying that he's gonna. So I'm just gonna pardon me, sorry. I'm just going to look at the France 24 article we've got as a source here and read some of his direct justifications for this. He said the economy is in such a state that it cannot take the slightest shock. There is no room to make mistakes. This is not the time to discuss if the terms are good or bad, if the agreement is favorable to us or not. The process had taken about 2 years and we cannot start all over again. So you can make up your own minds whether this is being practical and level-headed and trying to make good decisions for the economy, or if he is a spineless Dengist worm who has betrayed the revolution and the people and should be replaced post-haste by someone who actually carries the revolutionary spirit and cares about the people of Sri Lanka. You know, do your own research, basically is what I'm saying. I don't know. Muel, do you have any thoughts on this? Do you think there's a perspective from which he's trying to do, you know, the sensible thing?
I think that it is always problematic when someone becomes a president, when someone becomes the leader of a country, the you know, whether you call it democratically elected or whatever. Of course, there was a revolution in Sri Lanka. It's kind of different. But when someone becomes the president, it's always problematic. You know, famously, Stalin, very problematic king. You know, it's one of those situations where it's like, you know, you got to remember that, like, it's very difficult to, what's the word? Interrogate power when you're the person who's wielding it. So no matter how much of a revolutionary you might have think that you were during the revolution, if he's someone who participated in the revolution or whatever, if he's been a trade unionist or anything like that, he will still have the struggle of trying to interrogate his own power as the president of a country. I don't know what the Sri Lankan constitution looks like. I don't know if they've got a new one. I don't know if they're going to pass a new one. I don't know if there's going to be a reform with it or anything like that. And I think that, like, that is always the issue, isn't it? Is that, like, if you had a previous president and the constitution allowed him to be insane and do nepotism, what is it called? An oligarchy? It's not an oligarchy. It's a summigarchy. It's a anyway. I think it is just nepotism, like when it's like a family sort of thing. But anyway, you know, if it allowed him to do that, then it will allow the new guy to do other bad things as well. It's whether you know, the power can be interrogated, whether reforms will come in before then that make it so that, you know, a council can hold him accountable, hopefully a council of workers, multiple councils of workers in multiple different areas.
Workers' councils, Soviets coming together to, democratically control means of production. Yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah,
that would be pretty cool.
Would be good. But yeah, I guess we'll just have to see. I mean, at the end of the day, it's one of those situations, isn't it? It's like, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like, so to inform you a little bit about this guy's background. So his full name, like I said, is Anura Kumara Dissanayake, but he's usually referred to just as AKD. And he is like he was a student organ. He's been like an organizer basically all his life. Like he was in the students' union and the leader of that. And then he was like he founded a party called the National People's Power. And like back in 2019, he ran for president and only got like 3% of the vote, right? So it's like he has been, and then to go from there to like outright winning a majority from 3% is what, like the Greens, like I don't, it's like one of these completely marginalized things, and then like it's only this massive surge in like popular understanding of how the IMF is trying to fuck over their country and how badly they've been fucked over by the corrupt government that came before, that like has given him the mandate to do this stuff. And I don't know, like it's almost, it feels like an extreme version of, I don't know, like Bernie to some degrees. Like you have like a populist politician who people like really, really believe in as having like integrity, and now he is in the position of power and he's saying, oh well, we've got to make like realist, grown-up decisions. We've got to be really careful about the economy or whatever. I don't know. I just like, maybe it will turn out well, maybe it will turn out better, but it just like, this guy is like a Marxist who's like claimed inspiration from like Lenin and like, and as I say, has been like organizing his whole life. And like
It's really easy to say that stuff, though.
on paper, I'm
I
saying he
know.
looks like the
Yeah,
guy. You're just like,
yeah,
this
yeah,
is
yeah,
the fucking guy.
yeah,
But now he's taking an IMF loan, and I just don't know
yeah.
what that's going to mean for the country. Like,
There's a lot of guys out there who say that they love Lenin and they love communism and all this stuff,
yeah,
and then they take out loans from the IMF. It happens. It happens a lot. Anyway, there you go. There you
okay. Well,
go.
we'll see. We'll just see. We will simply see. But I think
Yeah.
it's something to watch out for. I think there could be a calculus that the imperial order is collapsing and maybe they just won't have to pay back their loan.
Yeah.
but but I wouldn't say anyone should be making that bet. I think
Uh,
it's more likely that he's just trying to play the capitalists game,
yeah.
and like make Sri Lanka like stable in the traditional terms,
Sure.
rather than taking risks. But I think that's a shame to see.
Yep.
I wish them well, but I think this is a betrayal of what has like literally gotten him elected.
Yep.
Mule, we've got one last news story to discuss.
Yep.
There is more rioting because of Zionists again. It's Zionists who are the problem,
Yeah.
who need to not be around anymore, and they should stop what they're doing. It's
Yeah.
their fault. But it's not them doing the thing exactly here, but you'll tell us about it.
I will. I'll tell you about it. There was a big anti-NATO, pro-Palestinian march in Montreal, literally yesterday, ahead of the 70th session of the NATO Parliamentary Assembly. So there is some imagery on the video here that you can see of actionists outside the convention center, the Montreal Convention Center, where they just fucking cumstered and dumpstered it. They were smashing windows, they were throwing paint everywhere, pink paint bombs, tear gas was used against protesters, and tear gas canisters were thrown back and disarmed and all that stuff. It's quite interesting what's going on in Montreal. This is one action in general. It was organised by the Anti-Capitalist Convergence, which is an anarchist group, and also Divest for Palestine. So it's a broad sort of coalition. You've got anarchists, and then just generally possibly liberals who want people to divest from Palestine. They wouldn't necessarily be liberals. They might be liberals in other aspects, but you know what I mean. That some people involved in campaigns that are focused on divestment can have any kind of politics. So it's these two sort of groups coming together and saying, no, actually, we despise imperialism. Everything that you've done is bad, and it's quite interesting. So, they made a real fucking ruckus, and I think they really scared the shit out of the cops, which is always good. And it's also really interesting to see what's going on in Montreal. Just in general, there was a student protest as well earlier in the week, which was in the university, Concordia University, where basically students voted to go on strike, like school strike, because the university is refusing to divest from the state of Israel. And the footage from that is insane. They've already been round the university and smashed the windows up. They've already been round and they've done damage. They've cost them like thousands of dollars in repairs and stuff like that. And it's a big action. These are big actions, and they're taking place on college campuses, which is historically a place where revolutions are born. And it's just really exciting to see this stuff whenever I see this shit. And it's students, and they are broadly connecting a struggle that lots of people in the local community support. For example, the genocide in Palestine. People are struggling against that all over the world. And these students have just got so much energy. They've got so much zest for actual revolution and ending imperialism. It's really good. So yeah, keep an eye on Montreal. Some good stuff going on there, as there is all over the world. I don't know if you just want me to go into the comrades of the show segment.
No, I have a couple of thoughts on this. So I think what you're saying about students is really interesting. Mao was famously a big fan of the student movement that came became massive supporters of Mao during and after the initial communist revolution, the Chinese Civil War, and then the revolution, and then the Cultural Revolution was a bad time, but there was a lot of communist organizing among students that was pushing Mao Zedong thought there, right? I think that an interesting parallel to see between students in the imperial core and students of the last century in the imperial periphery, right? When you've got student movements who are Maoist in China supporting Mao at the time, and students now who the right-wing press wants to slander as the universities are left-wing indoctrination machines. What you're seeing there in both cases is a population who are fucked over, eternally fucked over and completely and utterly fucked over and have no future because of the people they're being fucked over by, being educated enough to grasp just how fucked over they're getting, and it makes them radical, right? It's reality has a left-wing bias. And so of course you see these massive pro-Palestine movements in college campuses. It's not just a general left-wing atmosphere. It's people being given the tools to understand their social positioning. In Epistemic Injustice, Miranda Fricker talks about two different types of epistemic injustice. Testimonial injustice, people are discriminated against, they're not listened to, their ability to tell their own story is flattened because of some group that they're in. And hermeneutic injustice. Now, hermeneutic injustice is people not being able to understand their social position, not being able to understand the social forces around them, right? And this kind of injustice, this kind of moral wrong and injustice being done to people systemically is because people don't have a class analysis lens, right? And that's not just proletariat bourgeoisie base and hegemony kind of class analysis, right? It's not just a socioeconomic one. It's also an analysis of marginalized classes, and it's also an analysis of the global structure of imperialism. It's these class analyses, right, which are many faceted. And once you gain the tools to be able to understand your position, the only thing left to do is act and free yourself and fight and struggle and overthrow your oppressor and free yourself, right? And this is you could think of this in terms of people joining a renters union who they're suffering the injustice of not understanding their position in the class of renters and the class of landlords and the state working together to fuck them over, right? But then they join the union and they get political education, and then they're together in a body that can struggle and fight to free them. In the same way, young people in the imperial core are hilariously fucked, hysterically fucked, so fucked. We have no future, right? And university educated young people as well, were promised this idea of we're going to go to university and it's a guaranteed pathway to a well-paying job and own a house and have kids and then retire and everything will be just fucking peachy as long as you don't switch your brain on and don't think too hard about anything, right? And then there's like that was a massive push in the UK, but it's true of countries across the imperial core. Is that there was this massive push towards higher education. Blair literally like it was Blair's famous soundbite catchphrase: education, 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 and all these people were pushed through universities acting as like degree mills to just get them a degree that they can't use in any kind of fucking job, right? And it's very rare for people to actually be able to use their degree to actually get a job that will be well, let alone a well-paying one, to actually use their degree in a satisfying way and like find work in the thing that they've studied. And then yeah, they realize that they've been fucked over and they become radical. I don't know. I just think like students as a revolutionary base are a really interesting class to think about. And it's incredible to see how much like college campus solidarity with Palestine we've been seeing. I think under Trump, we will probably see a bunch of very interesting conflict around college campuses and not just like attempts to restrict what is being taught, but like probably more militancy from students in fighting back in this kind of way, right? This is a militant protest. This is people who are not just like it's not just the level of violence that they're operating at, like targeting property. It's the level of discipline in carrying that out. That's what militancy is. It's like acting as a militant body. And I think, we're just going to be seeing more of this, and it's going to be a very interesting thing to watch. Like as the next few years play out, is like we're probably going to see more militant political student orgs.
Yeah. And that is the end of the main news segment that we're going to be talking about on the show today. It's just a news roundup today, but we're going to be talking about some comrades of the show just very briefly. Some of you may have heard that 10 Palestine Action activists have been arrested this week under UK anti-terrorism powers, the oldest being a 72-year-old from Hull, the youngest a 19-year-old from London. Earlier this week, police broke into the homes of Palestine actionists and their families and arrested 10 actionists under UK anti-terror laws. They were held for an indefinite amount of time and then charged with non-terror related offences on Friday, when they were then transported to Westminster for bail decisions. 8 have been held on remand until trial for at the very least 2 weeks, and 2 others were granted bail. The charges range from criminal damage to aggravated burglary. 3 actionists have engaged in a hunger strike in protest of the obvious fascism and overreach of state police powers used to silence citizens of the UK, upholding international law and sabotaging Elbit systems complicit in the genocidal war crimes in Palestine. And this actually brings the total of Palestine Action prisoners currently held in UK prisons up to 40. Solidarity and love to all actionists fighting genocide, and head over to palestineaction.org/prisoners to see how you could support our comrades behind bars. However, please note that at the time of this recording of this show, the website has not updated to show the newly imprisoned actionists. But yeah, head over there and see what you can do. I mean, just, I guess, like to end the show, just, you know, talking about this one a little bit. It's just very, very obvious how the anti-terror laws that we were all talking about years and years ago when they were bringing them in, everybody was saying these are going to be used against left-wing organizations. It's not for ISIS. Like, they're saying it's for ISIS, but it's not for ISIS. It's for us. It's for anyone who challenges the state's authority. That's what Palestine Action has consistently done.
And it's a Labour government doing this.
It's a Labour government doing this. Top cop, kid starver, queer harmer, piece of shit cunt. So you know, it's one of those, isn't it? Again, where it is just one of those situations where, the state has clearly just abused its power to put people in prison, despite them actually trying to force the state to comply with international law and stop arming Israel.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's spot on. I think just a brief thing is like you're reminding me the article about like more autistic people are disproportionately referred to prevent, right? Is a great example of like the anti-terrorism powers that were brought in. And it's like when they were talking about the prevent scheme, which is basically a re-education scheme the UK government has to try to like de-radicalize people, like the initial understanding of this was like to identify people in Muslim communities who they think might be a terror risk and get them referred to prevent to de-radicalize them to stop them from hurting anyone. Which like I don't want there to be Islamic extremist terror attacks, but also like that scheme is asking for people to act as like police, particularly focused on like Muslim populations, is just so like horrible and racist and cop-brained. And it's inevitably become this thing where like people are being referred to prevent because they're autistic and they like have a I think the article talking about autistic people, it was talking about like a lot of autistic people just like are marginalized because they're autism. They have a strong moral compass, and so they care about the shit that's going on in the world, and that's a radicalizing thing. And then people are winding up like referred to prevent. Um, anyway, so fucking wacky.
Yeah.
Support Palestine action was the actual thing we were talking about. I just wanted to rant about how shit our fascist government is.
Yeah.
Um,
I think that's valid.
Starmer.
Yeah. Fuck that guy.
Once again, palestineaction.org/prisoners to go and see how you can support our comrades behind bars. Yeah.
Yeah. And there you have it, everyone. It's a show. I guess we're just not really doing questions.
No, I mean, what would the questions be?
What would they be? What could you even think to ask us about?
We are reachable on social media, so if you think there's stuff that we should be covering that has been like missed out in the news and you want to hear more about and you want us to look into, like you can contact us.
Don't ever tag me on social media ever. don't ever come into my replies. You won't get a response. I will block you immediately.
Okay, well, you know which one of us to
Sophie,
not
whatever. Sophie's saying it. Sophie's saying it for her.
If you you know what? We'll do our host promo stuff in a second. I'll mention my social media stuff there. If you want, if you think there's stuff that we should be talking about in the news, feel free to tag me on whatever. Not Mule. Don't tag Mule.
Don't even think about me.
It will make him cry.
It won't. It'll just make me really angry, and you wouldn't like me when I'm angry.
But we are a show is made possible by the support of our patrons over at patreon.com/red_planet. There are various different tiers, but I'm pretty sure that at any tier you can access our Patreon bonus content. We now have a couple of new bonus episodes up where we're showing Tim episodes of Deep Space Nine. I mentioned it earlier. We watched the Ferengi Feminism and the one with Jadzia being big gay in the first bonus episode, and then just this week gone we sat down with our Tim again and some of our pals in the Patreon Discord, and we watched the one about Julian Bashir having space autism and the one about Cardassia has a right to defend itself. I'm trying to like describe these in a way where people who have seen Deep Space Nine will know what I'm talking about, and people who have not will not get spoilers for Deep Space Nine if they want to watch it. But anyway, it's a good and fun time. And those aren't the only bonus episodes we're doing. Mule and I are going to hang out sometime this week and have a chat about fungus thought and how to be a good little mushroom spore in the revolution. And also just like what we kind of expect is going to happen in the years coming up. Stuff like this. Behind the scenes chats. We're going to be hanging out with organizer pals as well, doing stuff like that. Lots of exciting stuff happening on the Patreon. Lots of tiers you can check out. You can get into our Patreon Discord. You can get merch, all that stuff. But at the highest tier, which is called Sickos, you get a personal thanks on every show. That thanks looks like this. Thank you to our Sickos, JBP, and Risk Inverse for making the show possible.
Thank you very much.
But first, last, the only thing left before we go is Mule. Where can people find you online?
Oh, last things last. You can get me on my YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/C/DJMUEL. I did a video about Quiz for Palestine organizing. I did that like about a month ago. It was pretty good. Most people seem to like it. I've got another video planned with a very special guest, but that guest is first going to be on Red Planet, so I'm not going to tell you who it is. But it's very exciting, I'm going to be doing another episode. It's been an entire year. Think about this, everyone. I was planning on doing 4 episodes of this new type of video that I was making last year. This year I was planning on doing 4 of them this year. I've done 0. I did 1 at Christmas last year, and I've got another one that is probably going to be released in December this year at the very least, maybe in the gooch of the year after Christmas. It's Bastard Landlord Influencers 2, and I'm going to be talking about another guy that I don't like. Tune in for that. That's coming soon. You can also check out some of my Patreon bonus content. I did a review of The Substance. It's a great movie. Everybody should go watch it, and everybody should give me money to hear me talk about it. Don't really know what I'm going for with that, but I don't know. Yeah, anyway, if you want to hear
I liked the
my
review.
thoughts
It was
are,
fun. I think he has good thoughts. Check
Thanks,
it out.
babe. Yeah, there you go. Shining recommendation there. Here's a shining recommendation from me. Sophie from Mars. Go check her out. I want to know where people could do that.
Yeah, sure. So it's Sophie from Mars on all the socials. No longer on Twitter. Deleted my Twitter. Don't have a Twitter for the first time in years and years and years, and it feels good as fuck. Let's just be real about that for a second. It feels really good to not be on Twitter. Get off of there. Blue Sky, not better. It's still just Twitter. It's just more Twitter. But I'm on there, and I tweet stuff like the Princess and the Pea, but it's PEE, right? That's stuff that I tweet on Blue Sky. So if you want to, you can go find me there. I'm better on Tumblr. My Tumblr is better. If you like social media and having a parasocial relationship to me, Tumblr is the best place to do it. After that, it's Instagram. I've got nice photos or whatever. Anyway, I don't know why I'm ranking social media sites. This is not important. You can find all my stuff at linktree.ee/Sophie from Mars. What is important is my Patreon, where you can support me and make it possible for me to keep living in my home, pay my bills, eat food, afford my medicine, that kind of stuff. And also you can see my videos early when I've done making them. So I'm currently working on a really big project called The Mad and Mentally Ill. I made some good progress on it recently. I'm feeling really enthusiastic about it, and it should be out sometime in the next few months. I'm going to do some kind of like silly fun stuff in the meantime. I'm making a video about how much I hate Wes Streeting. I really think he should not be around anymore. He is opposing assisted dying. He has banned puberty blockers. He is just generally a massive fucking scumbag. And I hate him. So I'm going to do a video where I just hate him for a long time, and that's the video. But I'm going to do more serious essay stuff like The Man and the Mentally Ill when it's done, and you can see it when it is done early on my patreon.com/Sophie from Mars. You can check out my YouTube channel. Everything is on my Linktree, linktree.ee/Sophie from Mars. Check me out and give me money, please. I need money to live. Money me, needing a lot money now. Cool. That's it from us at Red Planet. Fuck Zionists. I hope they all catch COVID and Ebola from a dirty hot dog. Right. Next week, we will be talking some cool renters union anti-landlord stuff. Thank you for watching.
Possibly
Bye.
on Twitch. Let's see
Maybe
what happens.
On Twitch. Fuck Zionists. Bye.
Whoa! Fuck Twitch.